Okay, so I have the camera on a tripod now, and this is actually looking down at my workstation. So this is this is where I do most of my illustration work, my digital illustration work anyway. I've got my Cintiq here that I use. I also use a Wacom tablet from time to time that I've used for years. I've got a couple of monitors here set up for having reference or music or that kind of thing up. I've got a board here with my paper reference of different characters and landscapes that I use for a webcomic that I keep up called Circus Adage. That's just the reference that I always want to have up most regularly. The webcomic is something that I do for a few reasons. One, it's a good way to keep me painting and drawing even when I don't have any commissions coming up, and to make sure I'm just always doing something to get a little bit better. It's also something that I enjoy. I love the storytelling of it. I enjoy learning about storytelling. I think you learn by doing. So one of the best things you can do, I recommend, is if you want to get good at something, just start doing it. Don't do it for yourself. Do it in a way that keeps you practicing and keeps you failing. The failures are actually going to be the thing that teaches you the most. So don't be afraid to do that. Get out there and try things that may not work out, and that's definitely the case with the webcomic. I've learned a lot because I've done something that realized, oh, that was a bad foundation to lay. That creates a problem for me story wise. I didn't figure out this character's appearance well enough. They're not like they just blend in with the rest of the cast and don't stand out. There's lots of things like that I've learned from going through the process. So definitely jump in and try something that you want to do. Don't wait for the perfect opportunity or your senior thesis of college. Don't save those things. Jump right in. Is my recommendation. So I'm going to show you a little bit of work that I've done that has kind of taken me in the path of where I am. I'm going to start with talking about traditional media. So I'm actually, as much as I'm a digital painter and illustrator, I do a lot of traditional media work. I go to Life Drawing once a week. I still try to keep that up, and I do usually. I spent a lot of time doing this kind of work, oil paintings of landscapes. That was actually a lot of what I did in college, and it's actually one of the foundations that got me into video games, because I started doing kind of landscape work even in video games. So oil painting landscapes is a big foundation of who I am. In fact, this is what a lot of what the classes that Miss Stevens and I took together at MICA were landscape classes, and a lot of times they were oil. So this actually, that was Antarctica. I actually did a 3-month grant in Antarctica back in 2005 with my father, who's also an artist. And this is down in my hometown of Athens, Georgia. Again, Antarctica, Fells Point and Baltimore with the nighttime painting. I'll go down there and paint about 7 or 8 paintings a night from sort of late afternoon rolling into twilight and then into nighttime, and just shoot them out as fast as I could. This was only about this big in real life. And I would try to do just several of the same shot as light changed and fell from daytime into night. One reason I'm bringing up the plein air painting and the life drawing is because you can learn a lot from drawing photographs. There's a lot of reference you can pull up. I have used photographic reference. I use photographic reference for my digital illustration and comic work all the time, and you'll see concept artists for film and video games using photographic reference all the time as well. But it's pretty common advice from folks to say, get back to your roots, get back to your sketchbook, draw all the time, draw whatever you can. Doesn't matter what it is usually. And this isn't about making a great drawing of a human being when I go to these life drawing classes. It's about learning and failing a lot. This is near the end of the class where I'm warmed up, but I've done 20 faster ink washes or drawings that have where I screwed up, and you see even this arm's a little strange. But by doing it and failing, I'm learning something. So it's important to get out there and just practice and practice and practice, and especially from real life. If you're doing this from a photograph, you're not seeing, as you move your head around, as you kind of look around the space, how some of this stuff falls in a very real way. You're just getting that one static image. You're not able to see the whole of it. And that's super important. You don't get that experience of being with the person as well. There's actually, I think there's something emotional about being in a real landscape versus painting it from a photograph. You bring something of the temperature of the smells into that piece, and it sounds poetic, but I really believe it. The pieces get stronger a little bit the learnings are a little more impactful and stick with you when you're doing something from an experience that is going to resonate with you longer than just painting from a photograph or drawing from a photograph. So it's both a little bit emotional and practical. That there's nuts and bolts things that you learn better by being present with something, and there's also just that there's the memory stays with you longer. So those are some life drawings. And last, I'll bring up some of this stuff. This is actually, I keep journal sketchbooks when I travel, and whenever I go anywhere, in fact, or even here in Montreal, if I'm feeling like going down to a cafe and painting or drawing. So I'll take these with me. It's a Moleskine watercolor book. Moleskine's the brand, and I got a little travel watercolor kit, and I'll just find ways to draw and paint little things wherever I am. So this is actually from a Europe trip, but I basically fill one of these a year just in my regular life, and it's a nice way to just keep myself always kind of engaged in my surroundings. I remember things better when I'm painting or drawing them versus when I'm just walking by them. I pay better attention. So you can see and it's just a good way to keep practicing, and they're not very precious. You can see here the people, I'm not really going into detail, and I'm taking gestures of these individuals. I'm not capturing them as individuals really. It's too fast and people are coming and going too quickly. But it's a way to carry these places with you and to learn from them. Yeah, okay. So traditional media is important. I believe that very strongly. No matter how much you're working in digital, I think it's important to stay with that, and good and fun too. Digital illustration wise, these are some pieces from the comic. These are different covers for different chapters. And most of these are done in Photoshop. I'm also working on Clip Studio Paint these days, which is a program that was originally made for Manga. It was called Manga Studio for a while, then it was merged with Clip Studio Paint. And it's a lot like Photoshop. The brush engine that captures the pressure sensitivity is a little different, and I find that I like it a lot better. But the functionality is very similar between the two. You can pretty easily make this transition from one to the other depending on your toolkit. The layer system is the same. A lot of the tools are the same. The menus are the same. There's some subtle differences that can be frustrating at first, but if you stick with it, I'm about in my third month of using it, and I've just about made the whole transition and captured all the tools that I have. Today's demo is going to be in Photoshop, though, just for familiarity with a lot of the toolkit that you guys are using. But you can see, people and places are still very important to me, even my illustration work. That was a painting of my wife I did forwarding. This is the photograph I'm going to use tonight for my demo. This is a photograph of my wife that I took. I know her face well, so I'm going to be able to jump into this pretty easily. So I'm going to pull this over here. I think you can sort of see it a little bit. Yeah, okay. And then I need to find my Wacom pen. There it is. All right. So I'll try to remember to call out when I'm using different hotkeys and options. Because I do use a fair bit of hotkeys. I'm not a specialist in that. I know a lot of people that are much more extreme than I am, and purely using hotkeys or using the buttons here on the sides of the Cintiq. I actually don't use these much. I tend to have my hand flying over the keyboard a lot more. But different people use different things, so it's worth watching some videos of different people working and pulling little bits and pieces from everyone. You'll find your own sort of path and a way to work in these different programs. But I have my background layer, and then I've just made an empty layer here that I'm going to just do some sketching in, and just start sketching in her face, and get pretty rough with this. And actually, one thing that I'll generally do whenever I'm drawing a face, either from my own imagination or from a photograph, is sort of start suggesting the skull. I actually keep a skull, not a real skull, it's a fake skull, but on my desk. And this is helpful for having a reference, but even out of my head, I'll just sort of sketch in the skull to give me a foundation for how I'm going to draw the head. Another thing that I do a lot is, you can see I've got a hotkey here, Control F. I've set my hotkeys up in different places to do specific things, and Control F flips the canvas. This is really helpful. If you ever had an art teacher tell you to look at your paintings in a mirror, you'll see drawing problems with fresh eyes. you'll get really, it's amazing how fast we get accustomed to looking at our own work immediately. Like I've done this drawing already, I'm accepting things or making assumptions about things just because of how the brain works. But a quick reverse shows me, oh, actually this chin is a little too far out here. So let's pull that in a little bit. So I hotkeyed that just to do that pretty constantly. And you'll see me flipping back and forth from here on out pretty regularly. So just keep blocking in some of this stuff. I use the blue pencil on a neutral background for a few reasons. I draw with blue pencils. There's a Col-Erase pencil that I love a lot, and it's indigo blue. And they're just this lush, beautiful drawing pencil. It's not graphite. It has a kind of a more almost liquid feel to them in some ways. And so I've married that over into my digital work. And often we'll draw on top of the blue because you can keep it pretty light. And in my sketchbooks, I mean, and I'll just do the same thing here. This is basically my way of kind of knocking out big problems quickly and figuring out what's going with what I'm making bad assumptions around and where I've done drawing errors. So just kind of getting the layout down. I want to make mistakes fast at this stage. I want to figure out what I'm doing wrong as quickly as possible. So actually at this point, I'm going to, I think there's something wrong here, but I'm going to actually take this, bring down my opacity on it. And you know what, I'm pressing Control U, which is the same thing as going to Image Adjustments, Hue Saturation. And I'm going to drop my saturation on this and my lightness. And I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to clean up my layers in a little bit here, but I'm going to go ahead and do it now a little more refined drawing. Because I've worked out the big stuff, so now I can start getting a sense of some of the smaller kind of micro drawing problems I'm going to run into. And here I'm happy to like roll right over what I did before. I might use it, these drawing layers in the painting, or I might just drop them completely. I don't have hard and fast rules on that. I kind of go with however it's working. Yeah, so I'm still sort of go back and suggesting the skull a little bit, trying to make sure I'm referencing the bones that are pulling taut underneath. You know, you can see like these will show up in the face. These right below the eye socket where the skull is, and I want to make sure I'm showing where that skin is a little tighter across these areas. And I want the eyes to kind of fall back into those sockets of the skull. This might be me. Something that I find that I do a lot is I forget to draw in or paint the eyebrows, which is a strange thing to forget, but I often will look at my paintings or drawings after working kind of feverishly on them for a little bit and then realize, oh, something's weird. And it's like, oh yeah, I forgot the eyebrows. So I think a lot of artists have that thing that their mind just doesn't leap to for some reason. So this is coming along all right, actually. It's easy to get caught up. Like my wife's mouth has this beautiful shape to it through here. I know it really well, and I have to watch myself because I really love how her upper lip is sculpted, and I'll often I get kind of swept up into it and get carried away with the details of it. And that's another thing that life drawing is good at teaching you, is to not get too caught up in the details quickly. If you were doing a life drawing of a person and you start zeroing on the face before you figured out all of the flow of the body, you'll get lost, and you'll lose the flow of, and the detail level will be all off kilter because you're looking at a whole body, but there's fine detail going on in the face. There's a lot of reasons why it's it's not the best thing to do. But life drawing's great for that because you have a limited time. Usually you start off doing sometimes 5-second poses, and you have to figure out how to capture with a line the flow of the body, and then that line capture, in addition to being just very fluid and looking nice, when you get really warmed up and used to it, is often how you want to draw. A lot of times you want to draw with your whole arm, and digital actually is one of a dangerous thing like that. You can see like this is very small. This is like drawing on a sheet of paper. So I actually, you guys might have seen it, that I'm standing. I have a standing desk, and that's intentional. I try to keep myself moving. I'll stand back. I'll look at the paintings from a couple feet away. You don't want to zero in too much and get trapped in this digital screen. So, all right. This is starting to come together enough for me to feel confident to start laying in some paintings. One thing to notice, this is the tool presets over here. And this is almost always, different people will lay out things different ways, and some people don't use tool presets, but use brush presets in Photoshop. Because brush presets, you can see the brush stroke in them. Let me see if I can bring that window up just to show you. Yeah, so a lot of folks will have this up or the brush presets up here. This has pretty much everything I want in terms of brushes, and it gives me a nice, like for my inking, for my pencils, for my painting, it's for some effect brushes with like smoke and backgrounds. I just find this worked well with me, and it keeps it off to the side. I have a whole lot of real estate here for just painting and seeing my canvas, so I tend to just have this over here. It's in here in Window, Tool Presets down here at the bottom, and you can just make new ones. It'll capture. So if I won't go into too much detail, but you can find tutorials on this online, super easy, and try it out. I found that when I recommend it to people and they start playing with it, oftentimes they really fall in love with it. And Clip Studio Paint has a similar thing actually. It's not quite called the same thing, and it works a little differently, but that's a nice companion piece to this. All right, so I think I can drop. Let's see, how's it? Yeah, look at that. Look what that I did. Now that I'm starting to see things a little bit better. So actually I'm going to bring in the lasso tool, which is my selection tool. I'm using hotkeys, wrong way, to start moving things around. So I'll do this a lot actually at this stage. I'll do some hard editing. I'm deselecting and selecting with my hotkeys just now. And then shove and push things around to make it fix my proportions and anatomy and everything else. So I want to be really free at this point to make mistakes and correct things. Because it's a whole lot cheaper to screw up here than it is later on, or to realize you screwed up. So there's some things that I see that I want to improve on and clean up if I was really going to take my time with this. But in the spirit of moving on to show you guys some more stuff, let's jump into painting. So over here I've got a few brushes that I use a lot. This one's my favorite. I don't think there's a lot of brushes out there. There's a lot of different brushes that different people use. I don't think brushes make the digital artist the same way that brushes don't make the traditional artist. I do believe getting good brushes, a good foundation, is the right start, but it won't solve anatomy problems or practice or that kind of thing. At this point, I've done enough Photoshop painting that I can generally pick up the basic Photoshop round brush and do a painting it. These just are small little things that I found appeal to me a little bit more as an artist after some practice and testing and experimentation. But don't get caught up. I recommend not getting caught up too early on and experimenting with tons of different brushes. You might find some cool effects, but it's much better to just get comfortable painting a lot of paintings, as much as you possibly can. There's I used to teach at MICA actually, and one of the things that I would assign to my classes very early on, almost the first assignment, was in 2 weeks do 100 paintings. And that sounds horrible, but it's actually it's a great way to break yourself of a lot of fear and preciousness about this medium. They're only do like 4 inches by 5 inches and just lay in a landscape as fast as you can. And when you have to do 100 paintings in 2 weeks, it's amazing how fast you work out a lot of problems and fears and misconceptions around the medium, and you just start painting and having a good time. So, all right, let's get in some painting now, even though I've been talking about it for a while. All right, make a new layer. Good Photoshop etiquette would be to be naming these already, but I'm going to keep moving. And if I'm doing anything in the tools that you're curious what I'm doing, if I'm doing something I'm forgetting to call it out, don't be afraid to ask. One of your teachers probably knows. If not, I'm happy to answer any questions that get sent my way as well. So I'm jumping around a little bit right now and just knocking in a lot of color underneath my drawing layers. And like I said, I may come back in here and use the drawing layers, or I might just say, I might get to a point with the painting where I can just delete the drawing layer completely. As you see, like I'm not actually adhering to the colors yet. I'm trying to capture some of my darkers and go into lighters from there. This is very much based upon my traditional media background. This is how I do portraits, and I do an underpainting and very light glazing in oil and then come back in with the lights. Or in watercolor even, I'll kind of knock out the darks and in a lot of cases, and then kind of bleed into my lights with water. So I find that I am a digital painter in the same ways that I am a traditional painter. So let's just knock this out pretty quick. Let me zoom back out to get the whole piece. The more you can paint at this scale, the better, because you will get kind of tied up in little details in specific areas, just like you would in a real painting. So I enjoy working it out as much as I can. I will go in and zoom in if I really want to get a fine line or fix something specific, but for the most part, I tend to try to stay further out. It also keeps me drawing more with my whole arm. So I'm also color picking a lot. You'll see me doing that pretty constantly. Just pressing Alt to use the eyedropper shortcut key. That's for a few reasons. One, it keeps me from painting too much with all the same colors, but referencing the colors I've been using. Actually, now that I'm getting kind of this, I'm realizing that I'm probably off. I'm skewing my colors a fair bit because I'm still counting on all this background color. But if you look at the image, in real life, there'd be all these different things informing my eye of what these colors are. If this was a different color background, these colors would feel different because of their relationships. Everything in drawing and painting is relationships. So I'm actually going to start blocking in some of this now, even though I'm not really comfortable with how far the face is along, just so I start bringing up everything as a whole. And you also notice that I'm not color picking from the photograph. There's a lot of reasons for that. I might get lucky and get the color that I'm seeing there, but most likely I'm not, because it's a relationship. It's not a binary, it's exactly this color situation. Also, photographs are really noisy. They're super noisy. So let's see if I can. So if I zoom in, you can see what I think is this brown soft color over here is actually tons of little pixels that are sometimes. Watch this. This is interesting. You can watch how fast this jumps around. This is going all over the spectrum in just this inch by inch face, depending on which pixel I hit. So I'm not actually going to get a reliable color out of that. Okay, my timer just went off telling me that I've only got about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit. But anyway, grab a photograph sometime of your own and do that color picking thing just to show yourself how disparate the actual colors can be within a very small area, and the noise of the photograph can give you the wrong feel. So it's better to kind of work on your own and try to paint as you would with real media. And I know that's probably a theme that I've been talking about at this point for relying on traditional media foundations for your digital work. But I know a lot of artists that believe in that. Some of my favorite concept artists and digital illustrators swear by it. So, with 10 minutes left, I'm going to try to knock this out, at least in a very fast way, very loose way. You can see I'm not using a lot of sort of tricks. I'm mostly just painting at this point. There's no real cheating in in Photoshop. Um, Arguably, there's no cheating in art, as long as you're not stealing, from other people. But so you can use whatever tools Photoshop brings to the table. You can use, the transformation tools to change the drawing at any point. You can squeeze things, you can flip things. There's a couple tools I'll show you, like up here in Liquify, that are good for making adjustments. Those are all fair game. So, see, I'm still not very light, and the photograph shows me how bright the light is actually on Jess's face. So I'm gonna start kind of getting into that, but I'm not going full. I'm still staying way over here, so still pretty saturated. I don't want to lose my color. And I'm still not all the way up here at the top. I'm holding back on that as long as I possibly can. Because if I go too early into going too bright, then I've lost my ability to actually push that spectrum and show where the light is striking my wife's face. So, and I've whatever I'm talking about, I learned through making bad art over the years, and looking at it and trying to figure out why it wasn't working or what I did wrong, and just painting again the next day after I'd done something that I felt like was really bad, and that never goes away. That's I've been painting now for my whole life. So I'm 36, so I've been painting for I've been doing oil paintings for over half that since I was 15, and it doesn't change. So after 20 years of painting, I'm still doing bad paintings all the time. But you get better and you get more confident and you start being able to accept the bad paintings as part of the process. And let's see how that's coming together. Actually, it's not too far, but I think what I'm going to do now is actually I'm going to pull in the drawing. So I'm going to drop my blue, and then I'm going to start painting on top of my drawing, just to speed this up a little bit. So I can see that there's some warmth in the shadows here that I don't want to lose. So now I'm actually going on top of the painting, the drawing, which is a little bit, this is where I've got to be a little bit brave, because I'm losing some of that structure with the brush strokes. But at some point, you just got to dive in. So I bet, if I was painting this from life, the colors would be different. The photograph is giving me very specific colors that probably are not completely accurate. And sometimes that's okay. Sometimes you get inspired by even knowing things are wrong and not the actual colors that they were. You see something in it that strikes, strikes you in the piece you want to create, not the exact replica of the situation in front of you. But it's good to know that stuff. It's good to be aware of it. It's good to do things with intention. It's also good to embrace, the chaos of it, to, completely counteract what I just said too. But I think that's kind of the deal with art. You learn rules to break them. So I'm starting to be a little bit more comfortable going bright. Not quite that much yet though. That's too much. So I'm color picking constantly, almost every brush stroke, and fast. And that's just something that over time I think I've gotten faster and looser around. So let me go ahead and knock in some of these darks in the eyes, because I'm probably actually not. I'm losing some of my darks in the face. Oh, eyebrows. Remember I said that? Yeah, immediately, a little more human. And that's another thing. You'll learn the stuff that is, you're weird about as an artist, or that you struggle with as an artist. by painting a lot. So just, you know. So I am rushing this one a little bit, just to try to land in something a little coherent before I say goodbye to you folks. But this isn't too far off from how I'll start and approach a painting. Try to keep my brush big. That's true in my oil paintings too. I tend to try to stay away from going into a small brush for as long as possible. All right, let's push some saturation here actually. Oop. A little more than that, I think. Because she has a little bit of a glow. Yeah, that feels a little bit nicer. How's that showing up? Yeah. Because the light is very, very warm, or the shadows are very warm. The bottom lip is actually not that dark. It's almost the same value as the rest of her face. At least in this lighting. I'm starting to enjoy this a lot. This is where the painting gets fun. I draw a lot and I love drawing, but I'm really, in my heart, I'm a painter, and that's never seemed to go away in whatever I do. Even the comic work, my comic work is, you know, much more painterly than it is about line work, and I think it's just something I've embraced about myself over the years. So this is rough, but you can start to get a sense of how the piece is going to flow. It's not a perfect likeness of my wife yet. I might, oh, there's some green right back there. Some dark bluish green in the background. And some dark red actually. Very saturated red. As compared to there was some other stuff going on in the painting. And this should be darker too. So I'm starting to get a sense of all the relationships. I'm starting to get a better sense of the whole of the painting at this point. And that's really what it's about. You put in your foundation, like you put some anchors in, knowing you're going to change them. And that's one of the great things about digital is it is so fluid to change. So it can be awfully fun and free in that way. The freedom can be overwhelming. The number of choices I'm making it on a second level to change the piece can be really daunting. That's almost white. And it's good to just not get carried away with that and not be overwhelmed by it. I'm staying away from white in the face, but the background is pretty white. Pretty saturated in different places. So it seems with such little time, it seems weird to be focusing on the background so much. But okay, that was my alarm telling me that I am supposed to let you guys go here. So let me just do a couple of little fun things to ground this a little bit. So you can see that's as bright as I made it. It's just up in here. She has some fun little bits of light reflecting in her eyes that are kind of the icing on the cake a little bit. So I would do a lot more with this if I had time. And maybe I'll finish it and I'll send it over to Miss Stevens and she can share it with you folks. But overall, yeah, so that's a very quick demo. I would recommend, there's lots of folks online that will post tutorials of how they work. And check them out. Absorb as much as you can. You'll learn a lot from just seeing how different people approach different problems, and you'll find ways that you like things that you don't like, and you'll build your own approach to this stuff. I'd be very curious to see how you all work and how you all do different approach even of someone's face, as traditional a subject as that, you'll find that you're all wildly different in how you take it on. So thank you again so much. I'm so sorry that I couldn't join you myself today. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye.